I'm Shirakawa from Yui Transport. Thanks for having me again today.
Thank you. It's the end of the year, isn't it?
Recording
Recording at the end of the year. Wasn't it about time for the price hikes to start?
February 21st, actually. The notices, or rather the announcements, were sent out last month in November, so everyone should have them by now.
Have you had any inquiries since then?
No specific inquiries as such, but things like, I'll go with someone who hasn't raised prices, or I won't be using ohe transport anymore, and so on. Our sales staff on the ground seem to be hearing those kinds of comments directly.
But that's something you've already anticipated, right, Mr. Shirakawa?
Yes, that's right. As long as competitors don't raise prices, I expected some people to react that way. And also, we'll eventually have to turn some business away to fully comply with the 2024 problem. So if customers choose to step away on their own, then from our side, well, it means we don't have to be the ones saying I'm sorry. In a way, it works out. Yes.
Actually, let me think. Was it starting from February 23rd, if I remember correctly?
From the 21st?
From the 21st. How things will actually play out is still to be seen, realistically.
In fact, we're already seeing an increase in requests from other companies, and since others can't keep up even if people try to switch, they end up coming back to us anyway. We've seen that trend starting just a week after being told they'd leave. I think I've mentioned this on this channel before, but while I appreciate those who only use ohe transport, and I'm truly grateful for those who have become fans, so to speak, considering the various risks, I believe it's best to maintain relationships with all the companies. Well, every company has its own set of issues. Just like how we don't know what might happen with administrative sanctions and such, as those who know are aware. Well, other companies in the industry also have aging owners and are facing succession issues. So in many ways, there's uncertainty about what the future holds for them. And if that happens, a company you've never dealt with won't suddenly take on your business. Since everyone is already over capacity, even if you suddenly try to go elsewhere, they won't be able to take it, and that includes us. So for customers who say they're leaving because of the price hike, well, I'm sorry, but it would be fine if they just continued using us without making an issue of it. But if they do make an issue of it, then we have no choice but to prioritize the customers who stayed without complaining. I'd like people to handle that part a bit more tactfully, and, well, it's probably too late by the time this video is released. Besides, what I'm envisioning, or rather, what I think is inevitable, and will certainly happen, we've already pulled out of the Sapporo and Hakodate routes. The annual number of vehicles and the number of horses, when we were forced to reduce those numbers, some said, other companies aren't doing this, so we'll use them from now on. But when those companies eventually have to address the 2024 problem, or if they get hit with administrative sanctions, I wonder what they'll do then, you know?
That's true. Well, let's check back in 2 months after it happens to get your actual impressions. I'd like to hear from you again in late February or early March.
Oh, for the recording? Like early March?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
So before this price hike at the end of February, do you expect a surge in last-minute demand to move horses all at once?
We've seen that before, but before our freight rates go up, there might be a bit of a last-minute rush. However, horses don't usually move much around the end of February anyway.
Then it's more about what happens next summer, right? The peak season. When you raised prices once last year, didn't you say August wasn't nearly as busy as it used to be?
Well, since we withdrew from the Sapporo and Hakodate routes, it was quite, well, even so, there was still a fair amount of movement.
So for next year, do you think the number of trips might decrease again due to the price hike?
I wonder sometimes. Other companies are also operating at full capacity, so physically, even if they're asked, they probably can't move. And we'll have to turn them down too, right? If that happens, it'll just be impossible. In many ways, including things like this, we've taken the lead in responding this way. Every company will eventually have to do the same. If they don't, then the question is, how many more years do they plan to stay in business? And is it really okay to keep relying on them? That's the point. Looking 5 or 10 years ahead, companies that seriously plan to be around for the long haul like us, well, they're bound to take these kinds of measures, because everyone's operating in a way that could get them shut down instantly.
They've been very strict, like one strike and you're out. Hearing about Japan Post and all.
Even a company that big and well-known faces that, well, even if it's just one branch, for companies like ours, that only those in the know recognize, people are like, oh, horses are transported? In a world where most people don't even know horse transport is a job, well, the government would shut us down in a heartbeat. They'd issue sanctions without a second thought. So looking ahead, there are other companies like us who've moved even faster to implement price hikes. But on the other hand, companies that haven't, they're what you'd call niche, right? There are plenty of companies nationwide that focus on seafood, but they have their own regional specialties. For example, in Hidaka, they transport Hidaka's seafood. Just because a transport company specializing in Hidaka's seafood is gone, others won't just come from elsewhere. They won't spend the time and effort to come all that way. They'd have to raise the freight rates accordingly too. In many places, those who couldn't raise prices really went out of business. Only those who raised them remain, even in that local area. Various things are happening locally as well.
Yeah. So hearing stories from various places this past year, is that the vibe?
Right. Even before April 1st, 2024, back in 2023, many companies quit on their own. Since then, closures and bankruptcies have been steadily increasing. In that context, at first people would say, why are only you raising prices? And go elsewhere to cheaper places. But in the end, they have to ask whoever's left. Or rather, there's no one left to ask, and even companies that were shippers have gone out of business.
That's quite tough.
Yeah, so it's not about being arrogant, but it really has to be win-win for both sides. There are many products, but whether it's end users, general consumers, or national services, if everything doesn't flow in a win-win way, something's going to give eventually.
It might be hard for them to understand now, but in 2 or 3 years when the actual harm shows up, they might get the meaning. Well, I don't know about the general public though.
No, exactly. That's why I've been talking about this lately, really hoping they'll realize before it gets to that point.
You mentioned those 4 companies had a meeting recently, like in November. Everyone already knew about the price hike notice, and other companies heard it too, like Owens is raising prices.
Right? At the meeting before that, when I said we're raising prices, everyone was like, wait, why? They asked, why do you need to go that far? I've been told that. Why? I thought, why? Actually, I thought, why not? On the contrary, it's a situation where I wonder, can you really keep going like this? So I honestly can't help but think, are they really going to continue?
But shouldn't everyone be feeling it instinctively, that things are getting tougher?
There might be some companies that don't get it, but basically everyone knows.
I thought so.
They already know, but honestly, that's exactly why it makes me go, ugh, even more than before.
It's like, why won't they change or take action, right?
Well, it's a common story. It's the same with business owners and those nearing retirement. Employees often get like that too, thinking, I only have a few years left. That's probably the state they're in.
If the management is like that, it's pretty rough. If there are young people, wouldn't they be like, then what are we supposed to do?
I think so. Honestly, I'm starting to feel a surge of anger.
I think it's important to thoughtfully consider the employees and also the future of the industry.
Whether that's missing or just thin, it's honestly in a state that's a bit hard to believe. I hope those who understand will get it. This isn't something we can take slowly, and I feel I need to involve more people. I'll move forward with a real sense of speed, and I hope others in the industry will change too. Or rather, maybe they'll have no choice but to change, I'm not sure. It might sound arrogant for me to say I'll change things, but if it's necessary, then it just has to be done. If we just leave those who refuse to change alone, I don't think anything will ever improve.
It'll just lead to a decline, won't it?
That's right, yes. And, the employees, especially the younger ones, they're definitely aware that we're the only ones announcing price hikes. It seems that many are pretty concerned and anxious about it, genuinely worried that we'll lose customers to others. There are definitely a few who feel that way, and honestly, you can sense the concern in their voices. But even with that, we've reduced our operations to break even, or rather, we've set prices at a fair level where we can actually make a bit of a profit. So I'm not worried at all. On the contrary, as I mentioned, some say, your place is too expensive. They say they'll go elsewhere, but many of them are already coming back by the following week.
Oh, I see.
The veterans aren't worried at all. Yeah, they know there's nowhere else for them to go. The newcomers don't quite see how the industry works yet, but the longer you're here, the more you understand the history and the trends. But really, like the seafood industry I mentioned earlier, and I just used seafood as an example, our horse transport business is the same. I really don't want us to be treated like a standard parcel delivery service. It's fine if customers want to look for a cheaper place because we're expensive. But even with Japan Post or the big carriers, next day delivery is disappearing and Sunday mail delivery is being cut. While all that's happening to the delivery services that go to every household, for a very small, limited, and niche industry like ours, to just say, you're too expensive, I'll go elsewhere, to a transport company. I want them to realize if that's really okay. And look, I'm being sincere when I say all companies should raise prices. But there's a way of saying things, you know? I can handle it, but for those on the front lines, hearing that makes them feel like, wow, after all we've done, you're leaving for that? Fine then. We're only human after all. So I would really like people to fully understand that and to please avoid making those kinds of comments or taking those sorts of actions. It's not just about the transporters, it's truly about everyone moving forward together. I've seen so many cases where businesses providing truly great service just can't pass on their costs, so they get weeded out and disappear. And when that happens, even if people realize they really needed them, you can't get them back just by offering money. Once they're gone, they're gone. Because it's a unique service, we shouldn't let it vanish. It's the same in any industry, but the more essential a business is and the longer they've been around, the less likely they are to be trying to make some kind of unfair profit, you know? When they ask to raise prices, there's a reason behind it. It's because it's actually necessary. So I'd like people to just accept that honestly. And that's not just for our horse transport business. I think many of you are in business yourselves. So with that mindset, it's the same for general users and for retail shops too. It's the same for restaurants. Just because you're paying, you shouldn't act all superior. If the staff providing the service, even if they're just part-timers, decide they'd rather quit than deal with customers like that, then eventually the places where you go out to eat will just disappear, you know? Now, I'm not saying that absolutely anything goes, of course. We have to maintain some kind of order.
Of course. I've always had this impression that word of mouth is incredibly powerful in the horse industry too.
That's definitely still very strong. I don't know if it's because it's such a closed-off industry, but personal referrals and horizontal connections are a huge factor.
Like Mr. Igarashi was saying, when a groom or a trainer retires, the people who are left just move on to another stable within the same training center, right? You were together there, and now you're together here. It seems like an industry where that kind of thing happens all the time.
That's right. It really is a very small world. It's a job you can't do without horses. Since you have to be where they are, it's concentrated in small areas and information doesn't really get out. Maybe it's because they're fine just relying on connections and word of mouth so they don't feel the need to develop, or maybe they're even preventing it, but I really think there would be huge benefits if more information was shared with the world. It would become more transparent, for one thing. There are so many things that go on simply because nobody is watching. Because they think they won't get caught, I guess. We really have to get rid of those "I can't believe they're still doing this" situations. Otherwise, the industry won't see any growth, or it'll be very slow. And when an industry is at a turning point like this,
whenever the world changes, there's always some kind of backlash, right? People ask, well, why are you doing this? Yeah, I feel like this price hike might be one of those moments.
That's true. I think the world as a whole is going through various turning points right now.
So I was thinking that by raising prices, the transportation side of things could improve, and hopefully customers' awareness will start to change as well.
That's right. So I might have mentioned this before, but I think horse owners who force themselves shouldn't continue. It's like the old image, and I think we should keep sharing this. I'd love to see cool horse owners who have some leeway. I'd really like them to do it as a hobby. Chasing dreams, you know, winning the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe or the Japan Derby. People who say, I won't spare any expense, let's raise a great horse. I'd love for people like that to be horse owners.
So regarding the price hike, there were various reactions, but we'll see what happens when it actually starts.
That's true.
I see. If you do not mind, please let me hear more about it later, at your convenience.
Our very first online recording ever for us. Remote recording.
Yes.
I feel like my gaze is drifting quite far down. Alright, thank you very much.
Ohe Unso is currently looking for drivers. Please check out our recruitment site or corporate site. If you are interested, we look forward to your application.